Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of materials today, focusing on the Mickey Cobras gang from Chicago.
Yeah, a group with a pretty complex history.
Definitely. So, our goal here is to really unpack that history, their origins, how they've changed over time, their structure, and the kind of impact they've had. We've got info covering everything from the very beginning right up to their more recent
Sounds
activities.
good. There's a lot to cover.
Okay, let's dive in. What really jumps out first is just how far back they go and how they've transformed.
Right. The sources say they started way back in 1954. Not as the Mickey Cobras, though.
No, they were the Egyptian Cobras then,
Yeah.
founded by James Cogwell over on the west side, North Lawndale.
Mm-hmm. And right away, it seems they ran into conflict.
Yeah, with the 14th Street Clovers. Now, people might not immediately recognize that name.
But they definitely know who the Clovers became.
Exactly, the Vice Lord. So this early conflict, this rivalry, it feels pretty foundational.
Absolutely. It kind of sets the stage. And there's an interesting detail. Some of the Clovers got locked up around 57.
Right, which must have maybe given the Egyptian Cobras a bit of breathing room,
Yeah.
temporarily at least.
Temporarily is the key word.
Yeah.
Because while those guys were inside at St. Charles, they actually regrouped.
Ah,
And they came back out around 1958, reorganized, much stronger, as the Vice Lords back in Lawndale.
so that setback actually made their rivals more powerful.
It seems so. Which might explain the next move for the Egyptian Cobras.
The relocation.
Yeah, around 1960 they moved, headed south to the Woodlawn community.
Seems like they were maybe looking for fresh turf, new opportunities,
Yeah.
especially with the Vice Lords getting stronger on the west side.
That makes sense. A strategic shift, and Woodlawn becomes really important for their development.
Then we get to 1966, and a new key figure emerges.
Henry Mickey Cogwell.
Right. James Cogwell founded them, but Mickey Cogwell really seems to have shaped their next phase. This feels like a major turning point.
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Because under Mickey Cogwell, things really changed. They didn't just stay independent.
No, they formed an alliance, a big one, with the Black Pea Stone Nation.
Huge deal in Chicago gang history.
Yeah.
And this alliance was so significant they actually changed their name.
To the Cobra Stones, that was in 66 too.
And Cogwell himself wasn't just some minor player in this new alliance. He rose incredibly high within the BPSN structure.
The Main 21.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The main 21 was like the core leadership council of the Black Pea Stone Nation.
Hmm.
And Mickey Cogwell held the second highest position in it.
Wow. That really cemented the Cobra Stones status, didn't it?
Absolutely. And this alliance was also defined by its opposition,
Mm.
against the Disciple Alliance and later the Gangster Nation. It shows how complex these power struggles were.
But here's where the story gets, well, really unexpected, based on the sources. Mickey Cogwell wasn't just involved in gang politics.
No, there's this whole other dimension. Community involvement.
Yeah, like the sources mentioned him trying to monitor police activity. Policing the police was the phrase used,
And getting government grants for a children's breakfast program.
which was apparently before the national free lunch programs we know today. That's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And he was also a union organizer. It paints a very multifaceted picture.
Extremely complex. But then you have the other side of the coin.
Right. Because the Chicago Police Department's Gang Intelligence Unit back in 1970 had a very different take.
They saw him as a link between street gangs and, well, the big leagues of organized crime.
Specifically, the Chicago outfit. So you have these two, totally conflicting narratives existing at the same time. One of community work, the other of deep criminal connections.
It's a stark contrast, shows how these figures can be perceived in vastly different ways.
Definitely something for listeners to keep in mind. These histories are rarely simple.
Then comes 1977, a huge event,
The assassination of Mickey Cogwell.
by Jeff Fort, who was leading the Black Pea Stone Nation, or what was becoming the El Rucks, and the reason given,
Cogwell refused to join the LRUX. Fort wanted everyone under that new banner, apparently.
that must have sent shockwaves through the organization, created a real power vacuum.
Undoubtedly. And his death led directly to the name we know today.
Sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, they renamed themselves the Mickey Cobras in his honor.
Yeah, it really underlines how central he was to their identity, even after he was gone.
So fast forward a bit, the Mickey Cobras are still around today. Where are they primarily based now?
Still Chicago, mainly. The sources point to Fuller Park and the Austin neighborhood specifically.
And they've spread out a bit too. factions in the Midwest.
Seen so. And it's important to understand where they fit in the bigger picture, especially within the prison system.
The People Nation Alliance.
Exactly. They're aligned with groups like the Vice Lords, the Black Pea Stones, what's left of them under that name, Latin Kings, Four Corner Hustlers. Big coalition.
And they have that symbol, right? The 5-point star.
That signifies the People Nation affiliation inside Illinois prisons.
Okay, let's talk about their activities. The sources are pretty clear on the criminal side.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's what you often see. Drug trafficking, robbery, extortion, murder. Pretty standard, sadly, for major gang operations.
And we have a very specific case detailed here, Cornell Green.
Right. He was apparently the second highest ranking king in the Mickey Cobras at the time.
And he got hit with a long sentence in 2001, 30 years.
For running a massive heroin operation. On the south side, this gives a really concrete look at their drug business.
And the scale was significant.
Very. The details mention street sellers using cell phones, selling dime bags, small amounts, but huge volume.
And the profits? The sources reported over $100,000 a week.
That's what was reported, yeah, between about 1993 and early 2001. It's a staggering amount of money.
Clearly a very organized, very lucrative operation.
And it wasn't just Green. Others went down too. Robert Thomas got 30 years. Kamordine Samimo, pegged as a major supplier, got 14 years.
And another guy, Roderick Parker, admitted selling hundreds of bags a day.
Yeah, it shows the depth of the network.
The assets Green had to forfeit also tell a story. A house with Italian furniture, home theater.
Luxury cars, fur coats. It points to the kind of wealth being generated by this activity.
Shifting gears slightly, let's look at their structure and sort of ideology today. Their formal name now is just Mickey.
Apparently so. Just Mickey. Maybe a sign of internal evolution, simplifying things.
And there's this mention of a growing Islamic influence over generations.
Yeah, this is really interesting. The sources mention a unique written constitution and bylaws, similar to the modern Black Pea Stone Nation, which also has strong Islamic ties.
So it's not just about street dynamics anymore. There's an ideological framework there.
It certainly seems that way. A significant shift over time adds another layer of complexity.
And despite maybe not having the sheer numbers of some other gangs.
They're still considered very powerful.
Yeah.
U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald called them one of Chicago's super gangs back in 2005.
Suggests their influence goes beyond just headcount.
Definitely. They have reach and impact.
Okay, and briefly, rivalries and alliances today.
Rivals mainly include the big opposing groups. Gangster disciples, black disciples. Sometimes tensions can even flare up with other People Nation groups. You know how those things go.
Alliances can be fragile.
Exactly. And their main allies remain the broader People Nation. And interestingly, that connection to the Chicago outfit is still mentioned as an alliance.
That old link persists, shows the complex web of relationships.
Very complex, constantly shifting, often volatile. That's the nature of the Chicago gang landscape.
So wrapping this up, it's been quite a journey. From the Egyptian Cobras in '54, through Mickey Cogwell's leadership, the Cobra Stones phase, the alliance with the BPSN.
His assassination, the renaming to Mickey Cobras, their entrenchment in criminal activities like Cornell Green's operation.
And now this modern form, just Mickey, with that noted Islamic influence and their status as a super gang.
Yeah, a long and really intricate evolution.
But what really stands out, as you mentioned earlier, is that contrast, especially with Mickey Cogwell.
Right. That period where you see deep gang involvement alongside these, like community-focused activities, the breakfast program, monitoring police. It's jarring.
It really is. Which leads us to a final thought for everyone listening. When you see this kind of history, serious criminal enterprise mixed with, at times, seemingly genuine community work, what does that tell us?
What does it say about how these organizations function, how they impact communities, and maybe even how they see themselves?
Exactly. How do these different facets coexist? It makes you think about the very complicated role groups like the Mickey Cobras play in urban life and how they continue to evolve. Something to definitely ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.